The woman standing on his porch wasn't asking to be loved. She was asking to love his children instead. Ethan Mercer stared at Lena Brooks, this quiet housekeeper who'd just shattered every assumption he'd had about why she'd stayed. Her voice had cracked when she said it. "I'm not fit for any man, Mr. Mercer, but I can love them, your children, if you'll let me." In the fading light of a Missouri autumn, with two motherless kids inside waiting for dinner, Ethan realized he was hearing something he'd never expected, an offering born not from hope, but from the deepest kind of surrender. Before we go any further, I want you to stay with me until the very end of this story. It's about the families we build from broken pieces, the love that doesn't ask for anything back, and the moment when someone finally believes they might be enough. If this story moves you, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The screen door needed fixing. Ethan had noticed it 3 months ago, right after Sarah's funeral, when the hinges started to squeal every time someone came in or out. He'd meant to oil them, meant to do a lot of things, but the days had a way of dissolving into exhaustion, and the small repairs that used to anchor his weekends now felt like accusations. He was standing in the kitchen, staring at a sink full of dishes from 2 days ago, when he heard the squeal again. "Mr. Mercer?" The voice was soft, almost apologetic. Lena Brooks stood just inside the doorway, her hands folded in front of her like she was always ready to leave. She'd been coming 3 times a week for the past month, cooking, cleaning, managing the chaos that had consumed his house since Sarah died. She never stayed past 6, never sat down, never asked for anything beyond her paycheck, which he left in an envelope on the counter every Friday. "You can call me Ethan," he said for probably the 10th time at a "Mr. Mercer feels more proper," she replied, her eyes settling somewhere near his shoulder rather than his face. That was Lena. Always a step removed, like she was living life from behind glass. "Dinner's in the oven, meatloaf. I left instructions on the counter for reheating tomorrow's portions." She moved past him to wipe down the already clean counters, her movements efficient and nearly silent. Emma's science project is laid out on the dining table. She said she needs poster board. And Michael's permission slip for the field trip is in his backpack. It needs to be signed by Wednesday. Ethan watched her work, this woman who had appeared in his life at exactly the moment it was falling apart. His sister-in-law had recommended her, a woman from church who needed work and didn't ask questions. In the beginning, he'd barely noticed her. She was just another presence in a house that felt too big and too empty all at once. But lately, he'd started seeing things. The way his daughter's hair was braided now, neat and careful, instead of the tangled ponytail he'd been managing. The way his son's school papers were organized in folders by subject. The way the house smelled like something other than grief. "Lena," he said, and she paused, her hand still on the counter. "You don't have to do all this. It's what you pay me for. I pay you to help around the house, not to—" He gestured vaguely at everything. "Not to remember field trip forms and science projects, not to keep my kids' lives running." She was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her voice was even softer than usual. "Children need structure, especially when things feel uncertain." "Yeah, well," Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "I'm working on it." "I know you are." She turned to face him finally, and he caught something in her expression he couldn't quite name. "You're doing better than you think, Mr. Mercer." The words settled in his chest, unexpected and strangely steadying. Before he could respond, footsteps thundered down the stairs. "Dad, Lena!" Emma burst into the kitchen, all 9 years old and barely contained energy. "Can Lena help me with my project, please? She knows about plant cells, and you said you didn't remember anything from biology." "I said I'd figure it out," Ethan corrected, but Emma was already tugging Lena toward the dining room. "Please? Just for a little bit?" Lena glanced at Ethan, something uncertain in her eyes, and he found himself nodding. "If you don't mind staying a bit longer." "I don't mind." He watched them disappear into the dining room, Emma's chatter filling the house in a way it hadn't since Sarah got sick. Michael appeared in the kitchen a moment later, 12 years old, and trying hard to pretend he didn't need anyone. "Is there any food?" he asked, opening the refrigerator and staring inside, like the contents might have changed since breakfast. "Lena made meatloaf. It's in the oven." "Cool." Michael grabbed a juice box instead. Is she staying for dinner? She's helping your sister with homework. Yeah, but is she eating with us? Ethan paused. In all the weeks Lena had been coming, she'd never stayed for a meal, never even sat at their table. I don't know. Why? Michael shrugged, but there was something deliberate in his studied indifference. Just wondered. She's nice, and she actually knows how to make food that doesn't taste like cardboard. My cooking's not that bad. Dad, you made spaghetti last week and forgot to cook the noodles all the way. They were al dente. They were crunchy. Michael grinned, and for a second he looked like the kid he'd been before everything changed. Just saying, it's cool if she stays. He disappeared back upstairs before Ethan could respond, leaving him alone in the kitchen with the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of Emma's animated explanation of chloroplasts. When he walked into the dining room 20 minutes later, he found them bent over poster board, Lena's hands guiding Emma's as they sketched out a cell diagram. His daughter was talking non-stop, the way she used to before she learned that some silences couldn't be filled. And then the mitochondria makes the energy, right? That's why it's the powerhouse. Ms. Chen said we have to remember that for the test. Powerhouse of the cell. Can we make it sparkly, like with glitter? Glitter might make it hard to read, Lena said carefully, but we could use colored pencils to make it stand out. Okay, yeah, that's good. Emma paused, studying Lena's face. Did you have to do projects like this when you were in school? A long time ago. Did you like science? I did. I liked anything that had clear answers. Mix this with that. Get this result. It felt safe. Emma nodded, like this made perfect sense. Not like English. Miss Peterson always wants us to write about our feelings, and I never know what to say. Sometimes the hard part isn't having feelings, Lena said quietly. It's finding words that fit them. Emma looked up at her, something shifting in her expression. Do you ever not have words? All the time. What do you do? I keep going anyway, and eventually the words come, or they don't. But either way, you survive it. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching this exchange, and felt something crack open in his chest. This woman who barely spoke, who seemed to live at the edges of everything, was giving his daughter something he hadn't known how to offer, permission to be uncertain, permission to struggle. Looks good, he said, and both of them turned, startled. Dad, look what we made! Emma held up the poster board, her face bright with pride. That's really good, Em. Ms. Chen's going to be impressed. Lena helped a lot. I just guided, Lena said quickly. Emma did all the work. Still, Emma looked between them. Can she stay for dinner, please? We have tons of meatloaf. The question hung in the air, and Ethan watched Lena's face close down, that familiar distance sliding back into place. I should get home, she said, already gathering her things. But you always leave before we eat, Emma protested. Don't you get hungry? I eat at home, sweetheart. But it would be more fun if you ate here. Right, Dad? Ethan met Lena's eyes, saw the panic there, and made a decision. You're welcome to stay. If you want, no pressure. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Mercer, but I really should go. She was out the door before he could say anything else, leaving Emma confused and slightly hurt. Why won't she stay? His daughter asked. I don't know, Em. Maybe she has things to do at home. She's always by herself, though. I heard Mrs. Patterson talking to Mrs. Chen at church. She said Lena doesn't have any family, that she lives all alone in that little house by the creek. Ethan felt something twist in his gut. He realized he knew almost nothing about this woman who'd been holding his family together. Didn't know where she came from, what her life looked like outside these walls. Why someone who was clearly good with children had none of her own. Maybe she likes being alone, he said, but the words felt hollow. Nobody likes being alone, Emma said with the certainty of a 9-year-old who'd never experienced real loneliness. That's sad. The next week fell into familiar patterns. Lena arrived Monday morning while Ethan was getting ready for work, let herself in with the key he'd given her, and had breakfast waiting when the kids came downstairs. She packed lunches with the kind of care he'd forgotten was possible, sandwiches cut into shapes, notes tucked into napkins, apple slices that didn't turn brown. Wednesday evening, he came home to find her teaching Michael how to properly dice an onion. "You want the pieces uniform," she was saying, her hands moving with practiced precision. "See? Same size means everything cooks evenly." "Mom used to just throw stuff in the pan," Michael said, and then froze like he'd broken some unspoken rule. But Lena didn't flinch. "Everyone has their method. This is just one way." "Did your mom teach you?" "No, I taught myself, had a lot of time and a library card." "That's kind of cool, like you just figured it out on your own." "Sometimes that's the only choice you have." Ethan watched from the doorway as his son, who'd been so closed off since Sarah died, leaned in to watch Lena's hands, asking questions, actually listening to the answers. When had Michael last shown interest in anything? When had he last looked like a kid instead of someone carrying too much weight? "Smells good," Ethan said, announcing himself. "Dad, Lena's teaching me to make stir-fry. Real stir-fry, not the frozen kind." "I can see that." "The key is high heat and constant motion," Lena said, not looking up from the cutting board. "Vegetables stay crisp that way." "You should stay and eat with us," Michael said casually, "since you're already here and everything." "I need to get home, Michael." "Why? You got a hot date or something?" He grinned, but there was real curiosity beneath the joke. "Michael," Ethan warned. "What? I'm just asking." "It's all right," Lena said quietly. "And no dates. I just prefer eating at home." "But that's dumb. You're here, the food's here, we're here. Why go home to eat by yourself?" "Michael," Ethan's voice was sharper now. "Drop it." His son looked between them, confused and a little hurt, but he went back to the vegetables without arguing. The rest of the dinner prep passed in uncomfortable silence, and when Lena left at 5:30 as always, Ethan found himself standing at the window, watching her walk to her car. She drove an old Honda Civic, faded blue with a dent in the back bumper. She moved like someone trying not to take up space, even when no one was watching. "I didn't mean to make her mad," Michael said behind him. "You didn't. She's just private." "She's lonely." Ethan turned to look at his son. "What makes you say that?" "I don't know, the way she talks sometimes, like she's used to only having herself to talk to." Michael shrugged. "Emma says she lives alone, no family or anything. That's messed up." "Some people choose that." "Yeah, but do they choose it, or do they just think it's all they can have?" The question caught Ethan off guard. When had his 12-year-old become perceptive enough to see things like that? When had he started thinking about other people's pain instead of just his own? "I don't know, bud, but it's not really our business." "Maybe it should be. She takes care of us." "Maybe somebody should take care of her." Michael disappeared back into the kitchen before Ethan could respond, leaving him standing at the window with thoughts he didn't know how to organize. The shift happened gradually, then all at once. It started with small things, Emma asking if Lena could braid her hair for school pictures, Michael requesting specific meals because Lena makes them better. The way the house felt different on the days she didn't come, like something essential was missing. Ethan started paying attention, really paying attention. He noticed that Lena never talked about herself, never mentioned friends, family, plans beyond the immediate tasks in front of her. She wore the same rotation of simple clothes, drove the same tired car, and carried herself like someone who'd learned not to expect much. He noticed the way she looked at his children, with something that went beyond professional care. There was longing there, and tenderness, and a kind of protective fierceness that reminded him of the way Sarah used to watch them sleep. He noticed that she always left before dinner, no matter how many times they asked her to stay, and he started to wonder why. The answer came on a Thursday evening in late October. Ethan had taken the afternoon off to attend Emma's school fall festival, and he'd invited Lena to come along. Emma had begged. Michael had acted like he didn't care, but clearly did, and Ethan had found himself genuinely wanting her there. She'd hesitated, but something in Emma's pleading had broken through her usual defenses, and she'd agreed. The festival was exactly what he'd expected. Games, food trucks, face painting, the organized chaos of elementary school families. Emma dragged Lena from booth to booth, chattering nonstop, and Ethan watched as something in Lena's posture slowly relaxed. She smiled at Emma's terrible jokes, helped Michael win a goldfish at the ring toss, stood beside Ethan at the bake sale like they were any other family, and people noticed. "Ethan, good to see you." Karen Morrison appeared with her usual 1,000-watt smile, eyes sharp and curious. "And this must be—" "Lena Brooks," Lena said quietly. "I help with the children." "Oh, how wonderful! It must be such a comfort having help, especially with everything you've been through." Karen's sympathy was performative and invasive. "And the kids seem so attached to you already. That's lovely. They're good children." Sarah would be so glad someone stepping in. She worried so much about them before well, Karen's smile turned knowing. "It's good you're not doing this alone, Ethan. Everyone needs support." Something in Lena's face shuddered completely. Ethan saw it happen, saw her retreat behind that glass wall. "We should find the kids," she said, her voice flat. "Make sure they're not causing trouble." She walked away before he could respond, and Karen watched her go with poorly concealed interest. "She seems nice," Karen said. "A bit odd, maybe, but I suppose that's not a bad thing, given the circumstances." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Oh, nothing. Nothing. Just that it's good you found someone who doesn't have complications. Makes things simpler." Ethan excused himself before he said something he'd regret and went to find Lena. He spotted her standing near the edge of the field, watching Emma and Michael run through the obstacle course. Her arms were wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold something in. "You okay?" he asked. "Fine." "Lena, I should go. This was probably a mistake." "Why?" She finally looked at him, and he saw something raw in her expression. "Because people talk, Mr. Mercer, and they're going to talk about this, about us being here together, about what it looks like. Let them talk." "You don't understand. I can't be—" She stopped, struggling with words. "This isn't appropriate." "You coming to my daughter's school festival isn't appropriate?" "Me pretending to be something I'm not. Standing there like I'm part of your family when I'm just someone you hired to clean your house. You're a lot more than that, and you know it." "I'm not." Her voice cracked. "I'm not anything. And the sooner everyone understands that, the better." She left then, walking quickly to her car while Ethan stood frozen, trying to understand what had just happened. Emma appeared beside him, face painted like a butterfly, confusion written all over her. "Where's Lena going?" "She had to leave, sweetheart." "But why? Did we do something wrong?" No, you didn't do anything wrong." "Then why did she look sad?" Ethan didn't have an answer for that. He just pulled his daughter close and watched Lena's car disappear down the road, carrying with it questions he was just starting to know how to ask. She didn't come back the next day, or the day after that. By Monday, Ethan was worried. He'd called twice and left messages, both carefully casual, asking if everything was all right. She hadn't responded. The house felt wrong without her. Breakfast was cereal and chaos. Lunches were forgotten. Emma's hair went back to tangled ponytails, and Michael's homework disappeared into the black hole of his backpack. "Where's Lena?" Emma asked for the third time that week. "I don't know, honey." "Is she sick?" "Maybe. I'm not sure." "Can we go check on her?" "I don't know where she lives." But that was a lie. He'd written the address on her employment paperwork, and by Wednesday evening, he'd convinced himself that checking on her was the reasonable thing to do. She could be sick. She could need help. She could be... He didn't let himself finish that thought. The house was small and neat, tucked back from the road near the creek, exactly like Emma had described. Her car was in the driveway, so she was home. Ethan sat in his truck for a full minute, trying to figure out what he was going to say, before finally forcing himself to knock on the door. Lena answered after a long moment, and he could see immediately that she'd been crying. "Mr. Mercer, what are you doing here?" "You didn't come to work. I wanted to make sure you were okay." "I'm fine. I was going to call. I've been unwell." She was lying. He could see it in every line of her body. "Lena, what happened?" "Nothing happened. I just think it's better if I stop coming. I can recommend someone else to help with the children. Mrs. Patterson knows several women who... I don't want someone else. The kids don't want someone else." "What the kids want isn't relevant. I'm not..." She stopped, her composure cracking. "I can't do this." "Can't do what?" "This." She gestured helplessly between them. "Pretend I'm something I'm not." that I belong in your life, in your home. People are already talking, already assuming, and they're wrong. I can't let them think, I can't let your children think. Think what? That I could ever be anything more than hired help. The words hung between them, sharp and painful, and Ethan felt something click into place. All the pieces he'd been trying to understand suddenly made sense. The distance she kept, the way she never stayed for meals, the panic in her eyes when people at the festival had looked at them like a family. Is this about Karen Morrison? About what people might say? It's about reality, Mr. Mercer. About not giving your children false hope or letting them get attached to someone who can never be what they need. And what do they need? A mother, a complete family, someone who can give them everything. Her voice broke. I'm not that person. I can never be that person. Why not? The question seemed to knock something loose in her, and before he could brace himself, the truth came pouring out. Because I'm broken. Because I was married once, and he left me when he found out I couldn't have children. Because I spent 3 years trying everything, every doctor, every treatment, every prayer, and nothing worked. Because I'm 34 years old and I live alone and I clean houses for a living, and I will never ever be enough for any man who wants a real family. She was crying now, words tumbling out like they'd been locked up too long. So I can take care of your children, Mr. Mercer. I can cook their meals and braid their hair and help with homework. But I cannot stand there and pretend I could ever be more than that. I cannot let them love me when I have nothing to give back except this broken, useless version of love that isn't enough for anyone. Ethan stood on her porch, watching this woman shatter in front of him, and felt everything shift. Lena, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. I need you to leave. Please. She started to close the door, but he caught it, held it open. Wait, just wait. He took a breath, trying to find the right words. You think you can't be enough because you can't have children. I know I can't. But my children are already here. She stared at him, not understanding. They're here, Lena. Emma and Michael. They exist. They need someone who will show up and braid hair and remember permission slips and teach them how to dice onions. They need someone who sees them, who makes them feel safe, who gives a damn about whether their science projects have glitter or colored pencils. That's not the same as what? As being their biological mother? You're right. It's not. But Sarah's gone. And I'm doing my best, but I'm one person, and I'm drowning. And then you showed up, and suddenly my kids were eating real food and doing their homework and smiling again. You did that, not because you can have children, but because you chose to love the ones already in front of you. I'm just the housekeeper. You're the person my daughter asks for when she's scared. You're the person my son actually talks to about things that matter. You're the person who's been holding this family together while I figured out how to breathe again. He stepped closer. So no. You can't give me more children. But I already have children, Lena, and they need you. Not some perfect woman who doesn't exist. You. She was crying harder now, shaking her head like she couldn't let herself believe him. I can only love them, she whispered. Your children. That's all I have to offer, not you. Not a marriage or a partnership or whatever fantasy you might... What if that's all I need? The words settled between them, simple and true, and Ethan watched as Lena finally looked at him. Really looked at him. What? What if all I need is someone who will love my children? What if that's not settling or making do, but actually exactly what this family needs? I don't understand. Come back, he said quietly. Not as the housekeeper, as someone who chooses to be part of this, someone who stays for dinner, who shows up at school festivals, who lets Emma braid your hair and Michael teach you about whatever weird thing he's obsessed with this week. Just be there. That's all I'm asking. You're not asking for yourself? I'm asking for all of us, me included, because that house is better when you're in it. We're better. And maybe you're better too. Maybe we need each other in ways that don't fit the normal script, but so what? When has anything about loss and grief and putting a family back together ever been normal? Lena stood in her doorway, tears streaming down her face, and for the first time since he'd met her, Ethan saw something other than distance in her eyes. He saw hope, fragile and terrified, but there. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Neither do I. But we can figure it out together. What if I mess it up? What if I let them down? Then you mess it up, and we forgive each other and try again. That's what families do. I'm not family. You could be. If you want to be. The silence stretched between them, filled with everything unsaid. And then Lena did something she'd never done before. She stepped forward, closing the distance he'd always let her keep, and let herself be seen. I want to be, she said, her voice barely audible. I'm terrified, but I want to be. Ethan felt something in his chest unlock, something he hadn't realized he'd been holding closed. Then come back. Tomorrow. And stay for dinner. She nodded, unable to speak, and he turned to leave before the moment could become too much for either of them. But as he reached his truck, he heard her voice one more time. Mr. Mercer? He looked back. Thank you. Thank for seeing me. You're not hard to see, Lena. You just needed someone to look. He drove home through the autumn dark, past fields and farms and the quiet landscape of rural Missouri, and felt like something essential had just shifted back into place. Not perfect, not healed, but moving in the right direction. When he walked into his house, both kids looked up from the couch where they'd been half watching TV. Where were you? Emma asked. Checking on Lena. Is she okay? She will be, and she's coming back tomorrow. To work? To be with us, to stay. Michael studied his face. What does that mean? It means she's going to be around more, as much as she wants to be, and we're going to make sure she knows she belongs here. Like family? Emma's voice was small and hopeful. Yeah, Em, like family. His daughter smiled, the first real smile he'd seen in weeks, and settled back against the couch cushions like something in her world had just been set right. Ethan stood in his living room, looking at his children, and thought about the woman who'd offered them the only thing she believed she had left, her love, fragmented and incomplete and certain it would never be enough. He was going to spend as long as it took showing her she was wrong. Lena arrived the next morning at 7:30, same as always, but everything felt different. She stood on the porch for a full minute before using her key, her hand trembling slightly as she turned the lock. The smell of burnt toast greeted her, along with the sound of Ethan's frustrated muttering from the kitchen. Dad, it's smoking again, Michael called from somewhere upstairs. I know it's smoking. I'm handling it. You're burning it. Thank you, Michael. Very helpful. Lena set her bag down quietly and moved toward the kitchen, where Ethan was waving a dish towel at the smoke detector, 4 pieces of charred bread sitting on a plate nearby. You're supposed to watch it, she said softly. He spun around, relief flooding his face. You came. I said I would. I know, He gestured at the mess around him. I'm really bad at this. The toaster has a setting dial. You had it on 6. Is that bad? It's meant for frozen waffles. Bread burns at anything above 3. She moved past him, opening windows to clear the smoke. Where are the children? Getting ready for school. Emma can't find her library book, and Michael swears he did his math homework but can't locate it. The book is probably under Emma's bed. She was reading it Tuesday night, and Michael's homework is in his science folder. He puts everything in the wrong places when he's tired. Ethan stared at her. How do you know that? I pay attention. She started pulling out ingredients for a proper breakfast. Go tell them I'm here, and that breakfast will be ready in 15 minutes. He hesitated, like he wanted to say something, then simply nodded and headed for the stairs. Lena heard his voice calling up, heard Emma's immediate squeal of excitement, heard Michael's quieter, "Oh, cool." Then footsteps pounding down the stairs, and suddenly Emma was in the kitchen, launching herself at Lena with enough force to nearly knock her over. You're back. Dad said you were coming, but I wasn't sure, and I missed you so much, and can you help me find my library book because I looked everywhere, and... Emma, breathe. Lena steadied her, hands on the girl's shoulders. Your book is under your bed, left side near the wall. How did you... Never mind. You always know. Emma hugged her again, tighter this time. Don't leave again, okay? It's terrible when you're gone. Something in Lena's chest cracked open. I'll try not to. Promise? Emma, let her breathe, Ethan said from the doorway, but his voice was gentle. I'm just saying, we need her. Emma pulled back, looking up at Lena with complete sincerity. You make everything better. I make breakfast. That's not everything. It's breakfast and lunch and homework, and you remember stuff and you listen when we talk, and you don't get all weird when we mention Mom. Emma said it matter-of-factly, like these were simply observable truths. Dad tries, but he gets sad. You just listen. Lena glanced at Ethan, who was looking at his daughter with an expression she couldn't quite read. Your mother was important, Lena said carefully. Being sad about losing her makes sense. I know, but sometimes I don't want to be sad. Sometimes I just want to remember the good stuff. And you let me do that without making it heavy. Go find your book, Ethan said quietly, before you miss the bus. Emma ran off, and Michael appeared in her place, moving with the studied casualness of a 12-year-old trying not to show he cared. Hey, he said. Good morning, Michael. So you're back. I'm back. Cool. He grabbed a juice box from the refrigerator. For the record, Dad's breakfast this week was tragic, like genuinely bad. I'm standing right here, Ethan protested. I'm just being honest. You asked me to be honest about my feelings. Michael grinned. My feeling is that your cooking needs supervision. Get your homework and get ready for school. Already done. It's in my science folder. Ethan blinked. How did you... Lena told me to start doing that. Keeps everything organized. Michael looked at Lena. You staying for dinner tonight? The question hung in the air, heavier than it should have been. Lena felt both of them watching her, waiting. If you want me to, she said finally. Yeah, we want you to. Michael said it simply, like it was obvious, then headed back upstairs. Ethan moved to stand beside her at the counter, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, but not touching. You okay? He asked. Nervous? Me too. You don't have to be nervous. This is your house, your family. And you're choosing to be part of it. That makes me nervous. Good nervous, but still. He paused. Thank you. For coming back. You asked me to. You could have said no. Lena focused on cracking eggs into a bowl, whisking them smooth. I've spent a long time saying no to things. To people. It gets exhausting after a while. So this is what? You being less exhausted? This is me being terrified, but doing it anyway. That's brave. It's desperate. She poured the eggs into a heated pan. There's a difference. I don't think there is. Not really. Ethan reached past her for plates, his arm brushing hers. Scrambled or fried? Scrambled. And you should let me handle this. You'll overcook them. I'm not that bad. She just looked at him, and he laughed, backing away with his hands up. Fine, you're in charge of eggs. I'll handle toast. On setting 3. 2.5. Your bread is thin. They worked in comfortable silence, falling into a rhythm that felt both new and familiar. By the time the kids came back downstairs, breakfast was ready. Scrambled eggs, properly toasted bread, sliced fruit arranged on plates. Emma sat down with her usual chatter, Michael with his practiced indifference, and Ethan took his spot at the head of the table. Lena stood by the counter, uncertain. There's a seat, Ethan said, nodding to the chair beside Emma. I should clean up. Sit first, clean later. Mr. Mercer, Ethan, and sit, please. Lena lowered herself into the chair, feeling exposed and out of place. But Emma immediately started talking about her science test, and Michael mentioned something about basketball tryouts. And somehow, the conversation swept her up until she forgot to feel awkward. Can Lena take us to school today? Emma asked suddenly, since she's here? I have to get to work, Ethan said. But if Lena doesn't mind, I don't mind. Cool. Michael grabbed his backpack. Your car's way less embarrassing than Dad's truck anyway. My truck is a classic, Ethan protested. Your truck sounds like it's dying every time you start it. Lena found herself smiling despite the nervousness still humming under her skin. This was what she'd been afraid to want. The casual intimacy of family breakfast, the easy teasing, the simple assumption that she belonged at this table. 20 minutes later, she was driving Emma and Michael to school in her beat-up Civic, listening to them argue about whether superhero movies were better than fantasy movies, and feeling something in her chest that might have been happiness. When she pulled up to the school, Emma turned in her seat before getting out. You're really staying, right? Like not just today? I'm staying. Good. Emma hugged her awkwardly over the console. Love you. She was out of the car before Lena could respond, leaving her frozen with those two words echoing in her head. Michael paused before following his sister. She doesn't say that to just anybody, he said quietly. So don't freak out or whatever, but she means it. Michael, I know it's weird, the whole thing is weird, but Dad's right, you make stuff better, so just keep doing that, okay? He closed the door before she could answer, and Lena sat in the school parking lot, watching them disappear into the building, trying to process what had just happened. Emma loved her. A 9-year-old girl who'd lost her mother less than a year ago loved her. And instead of feeling triumphant or validated, Lena felt absolutely terrified. Because love meant responsibility. Love meant showing up every day, being consistent, not disappearing when things got hard. Love meant she could hurt this child just by being herself. Broken, inadequate, fundamentally not enough. Her phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. Kids get to school okay? Yes. Good. Thank you for taking them. She stared at the screen, trying to figure out how to say what she was feeling, then settled for honesty. Emma told me she loves me. The response came quickly. She does. I don't know what to do with that. Love her back. That's all you have to do. What if I do it wrong? Then you do it wrong and you try again. Lena, there's no perfect way to do this. You just show up and do your best. That's all any of us can do. She read his words 3 times, then typed back, I'm scared. I know, me too. Come back to the house when you're ready. Or don't. Either way, we'll figure it out. Lena sat in her car for another 10 minutes, watching parents drop off their children, watching teachers guide students inside, watching the ordinary miracle of people showing up for each other day after day. Then she drove back to the Mercer house, let herself in, and started doing what she knew how to do. She cleaned, she organized, she prepared dinner components that could be assembled later. She folded laundry and changed sheets and scrubbed the bathroom until it gleamed. And with every task, she felt herself settling, the familiar rhythm soothing the panic that had been building since Emma's casual declaration of love. By the time 3:30 rolled around, she had the house in order and chicken marinating for dinner. She was debating whether to leave or stay when she heard the front door open. Lena? Emma's voice called. Are you here? Kitchen. Emma appeared, dropping her backpack with a thud. Guess what? I got a 95 on my science test. Miss Chen said my plant cell poster was the best in class. That's wonderful. It's because you helped me. I told Miss Chen that and she said you must be a good teacher. Emma climbed onto a kitchen stool. Are you staying for dinner? Please say yes. Dad's making a special spaghetti, and by special I mean he'll probably mess it up without supervision. I heard that, Ethan called from the hallway. You were supposed to, Emma yelled back, grinning. Michael came in next, tossing his backpack in the general direction of the stairs. I made the basketball team. Coach said I've got good instincts. Congratulations, Lena said, meaning it. Thanks. So are you actually moving in or what? Michael, Ethan said, appearing in the doorway. Subtle as ever. What? I'm just asking what we're all thinking. Lena felt 3 pairs of eyes on her, waiting for an answer she didn't have. I'm not moving in, she said carefully, but I'm here. More than before. How much more? Emma asked. As much as your father thinks is appropriate. I think you should be here all the time, Emma said immediately. That's not realistic, Em, Ethan said, but his voice was gentle. Lena has her own life, her own home. But she's always alone there. She said so. And we're alone when she's not here. So why can't we just be not alone together? The logic was childlike and irrefutable, and Lena found herself looking at Ethan, uncertain. How about we start with dinner, he said diplomatically, and go from there. Fine, but I'm making a schedule. Emma pulled out a notebook. Lena's here for breakfast, takes us to school, comes back to help with homework, stays for dinner. See? Easy. Emma, Lena might have other things she needs to do. Like what? It was a fair question, and Lena realized with a jolt that she didn't have an answer. What did she do when she wasn't here? She went home to her empty house. She read library books. She ate dinner alone. She went to bed early because there was nothing else to do. I don't have other obligations, she admitted quietly. See? Emma looked triumphant.
so she can be here. It's not about can, it's about want, Ethan said, looking at Lena. What do you want? The question was simple and impossible. What did she want? She wanted to belong. She wanted to matter. She wanted to wake up with purpose and go to bed feeling like she'd made a difference. She wanted these children to keep looking at her like she was important, and this man to keep making space for her at his table. But wanting felt dangerous. Wanting led to disappointment and loss and the eventual realization that she'd been fooling herself all along. I want to help, she said finally. However I can. That's not what I asked. It's all I can answer right now. Ethan studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, then help with dinner. Kids, homework first. They scattered, leaving Ethan and Lena alone in the kitchen. He pulled out a pot for pasta water, and she started chopping garlic, and they worked in silence until he finally spoke. You don't have to be afraid of wanting things. Yes, I do. Why? Because wanting things means admitting I don't have them. And admitting I don't have them means acknowledging how empty everything is. She kept her eyes on the cutting board. It's easier to not want. That's not living, that's just surviving. So surviving is what I'm good at. You're good at more than that. He moved closer, his voice low. You're good with my kids. You're good at making this house feel like a home again. You're good at showing up even when you're terrified. That's not just surviving, Lena. That's living. It doesn't feel like living. What does it feel like? She paused, trying to find words. Like waiting for someone to realize I don't belong here and ask me to leave. What if nobody asks? What if you get to stay as long as you want? Then I'll spend every day wondering when it's going to end. Or, Ethan said quietly, you could spend every day being grateful it hasn't. The words settled between them, and Lena felt something shift. Not resolved, but acknowledged. The fear wasn't going away, but maybe she could carry it and still move forward. Dinner was chaotic and wonderful. Emma talked nonstop about her test and her friends, and a boy named Marcus who apparently ate glue. Michael described basketball tryouts in excruciating detail, complete with demonstrations of his defensive stance. Ethan told a story about a client at work who'd tried to pay him in vegetables, and Lena sat at the table, contributing occasionally, mostly just listening, and felt the strange sensation of being woven into something larger than herself. After dinner, Emma asked her to help with math homework, and Michael requested assistance with his book report. By the time 8 o'clock arrived, Lena had been in the Mercer house for 12 hours straight, and it felt both exhausting and natural. I should go, she said, gathering her things. Same time tomorrow? Ethan asked. If you want. We want, Emma said immediately. Right, Michael? Yeah, obviously. Lena looked at them, this family that wasn't hers but somehow was, and felt the walls she'd built around herself start to crack. Same time tomorrow, she agreed. Emma hugged her at the door, and Michael gave an awkward wave, and Ethan walked her to her car. Thank you, he said, for today, for all of it. I didn't do anything special. You showed up. You stayed. You let them love you. That's everything. She wanted to argue, to deflect, but the sincerity in his voice stopped her. I'll see you tomorrow, she said instead. Yeah, you will. She drove home through the dark, past familiar roads and empty fields, and for the first time in years, her house didn't feel like a refuge. It felt like a place she was leaving behind. The next 3 weeks fell into a pattern. Lena arrived before breakfast, took the kids to school, came back to manage the house, picked them up in the afternoon, helped with homework, and stayed for dinner. She never spent the night, but she was there for every moment in between. The kids absorbed her into their routines without question. Emma started calling her just Lena instead of Miss Brooks, assuming an intimacy that Lena hadn't granted but couldn't deny. Michael asked her opinion on everything from basketball strategy to whether his crush on a girl named Sophia was obvious. And Ethan watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not romantic exactly, but not purely platonic either. Something in between. Something that recognized they were building something together without requiring labels or definitions. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, they sat together on the porch while Lena waited for her tea to cool. This is working, Ethan said. What we're doing, it's good for them. It seems to be. It's good for me too. She glanced at him. How so? I don't feel like I'm drowning anymore. Like every day is just about getting through until bedtime. You've given me space to breathe, to be their father instead of just their crisis manager. You were managing fine. I was managing fine is generous. He paused. Can I ask you something? All right. Do you ever think about what comes next? Long term, I mean. No. Why not? Because thinking long term means assuming I get to stay, and I don't trust that assumption. What would it take for you to trust it? Lena was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Time, maybe. Proof that I'm not going to wake up one day and find out this was temporary. How much time? I don't know that either. Ethan nodded, accepting this. Okay, then we'll take it day by day. No pressure, no expectations, just this. Whatever this is. And if it stops working? Then we'll figure that out too. But Lena, I need you to hear me when I say this. He turned to face her fully. I'm not looking for a replacement for Sarah. I'm not trying to fill a wife-shaped hole in my life. What I need, what we need, is someone who cares about these kids and shows up for them. That's you. That's been you since the beginning. The rest of it, the definitions and labels and what people might think, that's all secondary to the fact that you're good for this family. What if I'm not enough? What if you are? The question hung in the cool autumn air, and Lena felt something inside her begin to thaw. Not healed, not fixed, but softening enough to consider possibilities she'd long since abandoned. I should go, she said, standing. It's late. Same time tomorrow? Same time tomorrow. She was halfway to her car when she heard him call her name. She turned back. For what it's worth, Ethan said from the porch. Emma's right. You do make everything better. Lena didn't trust herself to respond, so she just nodded and drove away before the tears that had been building all evening could finally fall. By Thanksgiving, Lena had been part of the daily routine for 6 weeks. The kids had stopped asking if she was staying and started assuming she would be there. Emma had taken to saving her stories for Lena specifically, and Michael asked her to attend his first basketball game of the season. The game was on a Tuesday evening, and Lena sat in the bleachers between Ethan and Emma, watching Michael play with focused intensity. He was good, quick, and strategic, exactly like he approached everything else. That's traveling, Emma shouted at the ref, who ignored her. Em, you don't actually know what traveling is, Ethan said. It's when they walk too much with the ball. That's actually pretty close. Michael scored twice in the first quarter, and Emma screamed loud enough that several people turned to look. Lena found herself clapping and cheering without thinking about it, caught up in the moment. When Michael looked up into the stands and spotted them, his whole face changed. He smiled, really smiled, and gave a small wave before running back on defense. He's happy we're here, Emma observed. All of us. Yeah, he is, Ethan agreed, and Lena felt his hand brush against hers on the bleacher seat. Whether accidentally or intentionally, she wasn't sure. After the game, Michael jogged over, sweaty and grinning. Did you see that three-pointer in the fourth quarter? We saw everything, Emma said. You were amazing, even though your team lost. We lost by 2 points. That's barely losing. That's still losing, Emma said cheerfully. You're the worst. I'm the best. Lena, tell him he played good even though they lost. You played well, Lena said. You have good court awareness. See? Michael looked vindicated. Lena knows basketball. I know basic sports principles, Lena corrected, which is more than Dad knows. He thought a rebound was when the ball hits you in the face. That was one time, Ethan protested. They walked to the parking lot together, the kids arguing good-naturedly, and Lena felt that same sense of belonging that had been growing stronger every day. This was her family, not legally, not officially, but in every way that mattered. When they got home, Emma asked if Lena would make hot chocolate, and Michael requested her help with a history essay, and before she knew it, it was 9:30 and both kids had finally gone to bed. You're here late, Ethan observed. I didn't notice the time. Stay a little longer? I opened a bottle of wine earlier. Seems wasteful to drink alone. Lena hesitated, then nodded. They settled in the living room, and Ethan poured 2 glasses of red wine, handing her one. To Michael's almost win, he said.
To his actual good playing regardless of the outcome, she countered. They clinked glasses and Lena took a small sip, letting the warmth spread through her. Can I ask you something personal? Ethan said after a moment. You can ask. I might not answer. Do you ever regret it? Not being able to have children? The question should have hurt, but coming from him, it just felt honest. Every day, she admitted, but not the way you'd think. I don't regret not having babies or pregnancies. I regret that it made someone decide I wasn't worth staying for. I regret that it convinced me I was fundamentally broken. You're not broken. I know that intellectually. Emotionally is harder. What would it take to believe it emotionally? I don't know. Maybe just this, time, evidence, people not leaving when things get complicated. She looked at him. Why do you ask? Because I see the way you look at Emma and Michael, and I see the way they look at you, and I keep thinking about what you said that first night, that you can only love my children, that it's all you have to offer. It is. What if that's not a limitation? What if that's exactly what makes this work? Lena set down her wine glass. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we've been thinking about this all wrong. You keep acting like you're insufficient because you can't be a traditional wife. But I'm not looking for a traditional anything. I'm looking for someone who will be here for Emma and Michael, who will help me raise them into decent humans, who will make this house feel like a home instead of a place we're all just surviving in. That's what I'm already doing. I know, and I'm asking if you want to keep doing it, officially, permanently. Her heart stopped. Ethan, I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm not asking for romance or anything you're not ready to give. I'm asking if you want to be part of this family, legally, officially, whatever makes you feel secure. We can work out the details however you want. But Lena, these kids need you, and I think you need them too. You're asking me to stay. I'm asking you to stop leaving every night and wondering if tomorrow's the day we realize we don't need you anymore. I'm asking you to trust that this is real and permanent and not going anywhere. Lena felt tears building. I don't know how to do that. Then let us show you. Move in. Take the guest room if you want your own space. Be here for breakfast and dinner and everything in between. Let Emma and Michael know they can count on you. Let yourself count on us. He leaned forward. You said you can only love my children. Fine. Love them. That's all I'm asking. The rest of it, we'll figure out as we go. What if I fail them? What if you don't? The question echoed what he'd asked before, but this time it landed differently. This time, Lena let herself actually consider it. What if she didn't fail? What if she stayed and it worked? What if she got to be part of this imperfect, grieving, slowly healing family? I need time, she whispered, to think about this. Take all the time you need. The offer stands. She left shortly after, driving home through streets that felt less familiar than they once had, and spent the entire night staring at her ceiling, trying to imagine what saying yes would mean. The next morning arrived cold and gray, winter pressing against the windows of Lena's small house. She'd barely slept, turning Ethan's words over and over in her mind until they'd worn grooves into her consciousness. Move in, stay permanently, stop leaving. The offer felt impossible and inevitable all at once, like standing at the edge of something she'd been moving toward without realizing it. She arrived at the Mercer house at 7:15, earlier than usual, and found Ethan already in the kitchen making coffee. He looked up when she came in, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of what had been said the night before and the question still hanging unanswered. Morning, he said quietly. Morning. Sleep okay? Not really. Yeah, me neither. He poured her a cup of coffee without asking, adding the exact amount of cream she preferred. Kids will be down in a few minutes. Emma has a math test she's been stressing about. I know. We reviewed last night. Right. Of course you did. He leaned against the counter, studying her. We don't have to talk about it if you're not ready. I'm not. Ready, I mean. Lena wrapped her hands around the warm mug. But I'm thinking about it. That's all I'm asking. Footsteps on the stairs announced Emma's arrival, and the moment dissolved into the familiar morning routine. But throughout breakfast and the drive to school and the hours she spent cleaning the house, Lena couldn't stop thinking about what staying would actually mean. Not just practically,
where her things would go, how they'd navigate the logistics, but emotionally. What it would require of her to stop treating this as temporary and start believing it could last. She was folding laundry in the living room when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Is this Lena Brooks?" A woman's voice, professional and clipped. "Yes?" "This is Margaret Chen from Riverside Elementary.
I'm calling about Emma Mercer."
Lena's stomach dropped. "Is she all right?" "She's fine physically, but she's quite upset and asking for you specifically. There was an incident with another student, and she's refusing to talk to anyone but you. Would you be able to come to the school?" "I'll be there in 10 minutes." She grabbed her keys and drove too fast, her mind racing through possibilities. Emma upset. Emma asking for her, not her father. Emma needing her in a way that felt both terrifying and significant. The school receptionist directed her to the counselor's office, where she found Emma sitting in a chair with her arms wrapped around herself, tear tracks on her face. The moment Emma saw her, she launched herself across the room. "You came!" she sobbed into Lena's shoulder. "Of course I came. What happened?" "There was a disagreement during lunch," Mrs. Chen explained, a kind-faced woman in her 50s. Another student made some unkind comments about Emma's family situation, and Emma became very emotional. We tried to calm her down, but she insisted we call you. "What comments?" Lena's voice was sharper than she intended. "Some insensitive remarks about her mother being gone. Children can be cruel without understanding the impact of their words." Emma pulled back enough to look at Lena. "Madison said I was weird for not having a mom. And when I said, I kind of do now because you're here all the time, she said you don't count because you're just a housekeeper and housekeepers aren't real family." The words hit Lena like physical blows. Just a housekeeper, not real family. Everything she'd been afraid of, spoken aloud by a 9-year-old who couldn't possibly understand what she was doing. "Emma," she started, but the girl cut her off. "But that's not true, right? You're not just a housekeeper. You're Lena. You're—" She struggled to find words. "You're you, and you matter. You're part of us." Lena looked at this child who was asking her to define something she herself hadn't figured out yet, and felt the walls she'd built start to crumble completely. "Can we have a minute?" she asked Mrs. Chen. The counselor nodded and stepped out, leaving them alone. Lena guided Emma to the chairs and sat down beside her. "Madison was being mean," Emma said fiercely. "She doesn't know anything about our family. She hurt your feelings. She made it sound like you don't matter, like you're not important, but you are. You're the most important person besides Dad and Michael." "Emma, I know you're scared. I can tell. You always look like you're about to run away, even when you're staying. But I need you to know that I love you, like really love you. Not because you clean the house or make dinner or help with homework. I love you because you're kind and you listen and you make me feel safe." Emma's eyes filled with fresh tears. "So when Madison said you don't count, it made me so mad because she's wrong. You count more than almost anybody." Lena felt something break open inside her chest, all the fear and resistance and careful distance shattering under the weight of this child's absolute certainty. "I love you too," she whispered, and saying it out loud felt like stepping off a cliff. "I was just afraid to say it." "Why?" "Because loving people means they can hurt you, and I've been hurt before." "I won't hurt you, I promise." "You can't promise that, sweetheart. Nobody can. But that's okay. Love doesn't come with guarantees." Emma wiped her eyes. "So what do we do?" "We love each other anyway, and we trust that even if it's scary, it's worth it." "Are you going to stay? Like really stay? Dad said he asked you to move in." Lena blinked. "He told you that?" "He tells us everything. Well, most things. The important stuff." Emma leaned against her. "Please say yes. Please. I know you're scared, but I'm scared too. I'm scared you'll leave and it'll be like losing Mom all over again. And I can't—" Her voice broke. "I can't lose another person I love." The raw honesty of it destroyed the last of Lena's defenses. This child had lost her mother and was brave enough to love again anyway, to risk the pain for the possibility of something good. How could Lena offer her anything less? "I'm not going anywhere," she said, and meant it. I'll talk to your dad when we get home, but Emma, I'm not leaving. Not today, not next week, not ever if I can help it. Emma threw her arms around her neck, sobbing with what sounded like relief. They sat like that until the tears subsided and Emma's breathing evened out. Can we go home now? Emma asked. I don't want to go back to class. I need to check with Mrs. Chen first. The counselor was understanding, agreeing that Emma could take the rest of the day given the circumstances. Lena called Ethan from the car.
Everything okay? He answered immediately. School called, but I was in a meeting. Emma's fine. There was an incident. I'm bringing her home. What kind of incident? I'll explain when we get there. Can you leave work early? Already heading to my truck. Be home in 20 minutes. He beat them there, meeting them at the door with worry written all over his face. Emma went straight to him and he scooped her up despite her being almost too big for it. You okay, Em? Yeah, Lena came and got me. I heard. You want to tell me what happened? A girl said mean things about our family, about Lena not being real family because she's just the housekeeper. Emma pulled back to look at him. But I told her she was wrong. Lena is family. Right, Dad? Ethan's eyes met Lena's over his daughter's head. Right. Lena is absolutely family. And she's going to stay. She told me. She's not leaving. Did she now? There was something careful in his voice, hopeful but guarded.
I did, Lena confirmed quietly. If the offer still stands, it stands. Then yes, I'll stay. Emma let out a whoop of joy and launched herself at Lena, nearly knocking her over. Michael appeared at the top of the stairs, summoned by the noise. What's happening? Lena's moving in, Emma announced. She's staying forever. Cool. Michael came down the stairs with studied casualness, but Lena could see the relief in his face. About time. Your house is depressing anyway. Michael, Ethan warned. What? It is. No offense, Lena, but you live like a hermit. This place is way better. No offense taken. Lena felt slightly dizzy, like she'd just made a decision that would reshape her entire existence, which, she supposed, she had. Can we move your stuff today? Emma was already planning. You can have the big guest room. It has the nice windows, and we can paint it if you want. Make it yours. Emma, slow down, Ethan said. We need to talk about logistics.
What's logistics? The practical details of how this works. It works by Lena living here with us. What's complicated about that? Ethan looked at Lena, something both amused and overwhelmed in his expression. She's not wrong, but maybe we should have a conversation about expectations and boundaries. Can we do it over lunch? Emma asked. I'm starving and we already missed school, so we might as well make it a fun day. That's not how that works, Ethan said, but there was no heat in it. They ordered pizza and sat around the kitchen table, and for the first time Lena let herself imagine this as her permanent reality. This table, these people, this feeling of belonging. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like coming home. So, Ethan said once Emma had demolished 3 slices and Michael was working on his 4th. Ground rules. Lena gets the guest room, her own space. We work out a fair division of household responsibilities. And we figure out how to navigate this in a way that works for everyone. What about money? Lena asked. I can't keep accepting payment if I'm living here. You're not working for me anymore. You're part of the family. We'll figure out finances together like any household would. I have savings, and I can find other work. Or you could focus on the kids and the house, and let me handle the income for now. We can revisit it later. Lena wanted to argue, but the truth was she didn't want other work. She wanted this. She wanted to be here when Emma got home from school and when Michael needed help with homework. She wanted to make dinner and fold laundry and handle the 1,000 small tasks that turned a house into a home. Okay, she said finally, we'll try it your way. Our way, Ethan corrected. This is a partnership, Lena, not you working for me. Over the next 3 days, they moved Lena's belongings from her small rental house to the guest room in the Mercer home. She didn't have much. Clothes, books, a few pieces of furniture that Ethan insisted on moving despite her protests that they weren't worth the trouble. Emma supervised everything with the intensity of a general commanding troops, declaring which items should go where and vetoing any suggestion that Lena keep things in boxes. You're not a guest, she insisted. Guests live out of suitcases. Family gets drawers. So Lena's clothes went into drawers, her books onto shelves, her few personal items scattered throughout the room until it started to look lived in rather than temporary. She kept waiting for the panic to set in, for the voice in her head that said she was making a terrible mistake. But it never came. Instead, she felt something that might have been peace. The first week of living there was an adjustment. Lena kept waking up disoriented, forgetting where she was until she heard Emma's voice in the hallway or smelled Ethan's coffee brewing downstairs. She felt like she was playing house, like someone would realize she didn't belong and ask her to leave. But nobody did. Emma dragged her to school events and introduced her to teachers and friends without hesitation. Michael asked her to attend his basketball games and actually listened when she offered advice. And Ethan treated her like an equal partner in running the household, asking her opinion on everything from grocery shopping to discipline strategies. 2 weeks in, they had their first real conflict. Michael had been caught skipping class to hang out with friends behind the gym, and the school had called Ethan at work. He'd come home furious, ready to ground Michael for a month, but Lena had quietly suggested they find out why first. "Does it matter why?" Ethan had asked, frustration sharp in his voice. "He skipped class. That's not acceptable." "Agreed, but punishment without understanding won't fix the problem." "So what? We just let him get away with it?" "No. We talk to him, figure out what's going on, and then decide on consequences that actually address the issue." Ethan had stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language, then slowly nodded. They'd sat down with Michael together, and after 20 minutes of defensive posturing, the truth had emerged. He was struggling in English, falling behind, too embarrassed to ask for help. Skipping seemed easier than admitting he didn't understand. They'd found him a tutor and instituted a temporary grounding, but the real breakthrough had been Michael admitting he was scared of failing, scared of disappointing his dad, scared of proving he couldn't handle things without his mom. After he'd gone to bed, Ethan had pulled Lena aside. "Thank you for seeing what I couldn't. You would have figured it out eventually." "Maybe, but you got there faster. You're good at this, at seeing what they need instead of just reacting to what they do. I just know what it feels like to be scared and not have the words for it." He'd studied her for a long moment. "You're more than I expected. More than I knew to hope for. I'm just doing what needs doing." "No, you're doing what love looks like. There's a difference." The words had settled into her bones, reshaping something fundamental about how she saw herself. By the end of November, Lena had stopped thinking of the guest room as temporary and started thinking of it as hers. She'd rearranged the furniture, added curtains she'd found at a thrift store, created a space that felt personal rather than provisional. Emma had taken to knocking on her door in the mornings, climbing into bed with her to talk about dreams or worries or nothing at all. And Michael, in his own way, had started treating her like a permanent fixture. He asked her about his crush on Sophia and whether his haircut looked stupid and if she thought he should try out for the travel basketball team. Questions that weren't just practical but personal, that assumed she'd be around to see the outcomes. Thanksgiving arrived with a mix of anticipation and grief. It was the first major holiday since Sarah's death, and the absence hung heavy over the house despite everyone's attempts to pretend otherwise. Ethan had offered to cook, but Lena had quietly taken over, preparing a meal that was traditional enough to honor the past, but different enough not to trigger painful comparisons. Ethan's sister Jessica came with her husband and 2 kids, and Lena braced herself for questions or judgment about her presence. But Jessica had simply hugged her at the door and said, "Thank God someone's taking care of them. Ethan burns water." Dinner was loud and chaotic, the kids' table overflowing with laughter while the adults navigated the bittersweet territory of gratitude tinged with loss. When it came time to say what they were thankful for, Emma spoke first. "I'm thankful for Lena, because she came when we really needed her, and she stayed even though she was scared." Michael had added, "Yeah, and she makes way better food than Dad." Jessica had said, "I'm thankful my brother finally accepted help instead of trying to do everything alone." And Ethan, his voice thick with emotion, had said, "I'm thankful for second chances, for the people who show up when you need them most, for family in all its forms." When his eyes met Lena's across the table, she'd felt something shift into place. This was real. This was hers. This was family, messy and imperfect, and more than she'd ever thought she deserved. After everyone left and the kids were in bed,
Lena and Ethan cleaned up together in comfortable silence. He washed while she dried, falling into a rhythm they'd developed over weeks of shared tasks. "Jessica really likes you," he said eventually. "She's kind. She told me I was an idiot if I didn't figure out a way to make this permanent."
Her exact words were, "That woman loves your children like they're her own. Don't screw this up." "I do love them." "I know, they love you too," in case that wasn't obvious from Emma's very public declaration. Lena smiled despite herself. It was fairly obvious. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan dried his hands, turning to face her. "Are you happy here? Really happy? Not just okay or managing?" The question surprised her with its directness. She thought about it carefully, wanting to give him truth instead of platitudes. "I didn't know I could be this happy. I spent so long thinking I didn't deserve it that I'd stopped looking for it. But yes, I'm happy. Sometimes that scares me more than being sad ever did." "Why?" "Because happy means I have something to lose. And that's terrifying." "Yes." "But you're staying anyway." "I'm staying anyway." He moved closer, and for a moment Lena thought he might kiss her. But instead he just rested his forehead against hers, a gesture of intimacy that felt more profound than romance. "Thank you," he whispered, "for being brave enough to stay." December brought the first real snow and the creeping approach of Christmas. Emma wanted to decorate the entire house, and Michael pretended to be too cool for it, but kept sneaking ornaments onto the tree when he thought no one was looking. Ethan asked Lena what traditions she'd had growing up, and when she admitted she'd never had many, he'd made it his mission to create new ones. They went to a tree farm and cut down a too-tall pine that barely fit in the living room. They made cookies from scratch, the kitchen ending up covered in flour and both kids covered in frosting. They drove around looking at Christmas lights, Emma singing carols off-key while Michael complained but smiled. And through it all, Lena felt herself transforming. Not fixed exactly, not healed in the way that meant the past no longer hurt, but integrated. Whole in a way that acknowledged her scars without letting them define her entire existence. One evening, while Emma was at a friend's house and Michael was at basketball practice, Lena found herself alone with Ethan for the first time in weeks. They sat in the living room, the Christmas tree lights casting everything in warm colors. "I need to tell you something," he said, and her stomach dropped. "Okay. I know we said this wasn't about romance, that you were here for the kids, and that was enough. And it is enough. But I need you to know that somewhere along the way, I started—" He stopped, searching for words. "You've become important to me, not just as someone who helps with Emma and Michael, but as someone I want in my life for my own sake. Ethan, I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I'm just being honest, because you deserve honesty. You deserve to know that you matter beyond your utility, that I value you as a person, not just a caretaker." Lena's throat tightened. "I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything with it. Just know it's true." He paused. "Can I ask what you want? Not what you think I want to hear or what you think is appropriate. What you actually want." "I want this to keep working. I want Emma and Michael to be okay. I want to be part of something that matters." "What about for yourself? Not for them? For you?" The question hung in the air, demanding more than she was used to giving. Lena took a shaky breath. "I want to stop feeling like I'm waiting for permission to exist here. I want to believe I belong without waiting for someone to prove me wrong. And I want—" She stopped, afraid of saying it out loud. "What do you want, Lena?" "I want to be loved. Not for what I can do or what I provide, but just for being me, broken parts and all." "You are loved. By Emma and Michael, absolutely. But also by me." He said it simply, like it was fact rather than confession. "I love you. Not because you're useful or because you take care of my kids, though I'm grateful for that. I love you because you're kind and patient and brave in ways you don't even recognize. I love the way you listen when Emma talks about nothing. I love how you don't let Michael get away with his defensive sarcasm. I love that you see us clearly, flaws and all, and choose to stay anyway." Lena felt tears building. "I don't know how to— I can't— You don't have to say it back. I'm not asking for that. I just needed you to know. You're not just the woman who helps around the house.
You're Lena. And Lena is more than enough. She was crying now, years of believing she wasn't enough finally cracking under the weight of someone seeing her and choosing her anyway. I'm still scared, she whispered. I know, me too. Love is terrifying, especially when you've lost it before. What if I can't be what you need? What if you already are? The question echoed through all the times he'd asked it before, but this time it landed differently. This time, Lena let herself consider it might be true. I love them, she said finally. Emma and Michael. I love them so much it hurts sometimes, like my heart can't hold it all. I know you do. And I think I might love you too. Not the same way, not romantic in the traditional sense, but she struggled to articulate something she barely understood herself. I love the life we're building. I love being part of this family. I love who I'm becoming with all of you. Is that enough? It's everything. Ethan reached for her hand and she let him take it. We don't have to define it beyond that. Love doesn't have to look one specific way. It just has to be real. This feels real. It is real. They sat together in the glow of the Christmas tree, holding hands and not speaking, and Lena felt something settle deep in her bones. This was her family. This was her home, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, that felt like something she was allowed to have. The confession hung between them like something fragile and new, and when Emma burst through the front door 20 minutes later with stories about her friend's new puppy, the moment dissolved into the familiar chaos of evening routines. But something had fundamentally shifted. Lena caught Ethan watching her throughout dinner with an expression she was beginning to recognize. Not desire exactly, but something deeper. Recognition, maybe. The look of someone who'd finally found something they hadn't known they were searching for. That night, after the kids were asleep and the house had settled into quiet, Lena stood in her room looking at the space she'd created. The curtains she'd chosen, the books arranged on shelves, the small touches that made it undeniably hers. She'd been here almost 2 months now, and the fear that had lived in her chest since that first day had transmuted into something else. Not confidence, not yet, but possibility. The fragile belief that maybe she could have this. Maybe she was allowed. Christmas morning arrived with Emma's shriek of delight at 5:30 in the morning, followed by the thunder of her feet racing to wake Michael and then pounding on Lena's door. Lena! Lena! Wake up! It's Christmas! Santa came! Lena opened her door to find Emma practically vibrating with excitement, still in her snowflake pajamas, hair wild around her face. I can see that. Does your father know you're awake? He's already downstairs making coffee. Come on, we have to open presents. Emma grabbed her hand and pulled, and Lena let herself be dragged downstairs in her robe, her hair unbrushed, her defenses still sleep-soft. The living room was transformed by the tree lights and the pile of presents underneath, and Ethan stood by the coffee maker wearing an expression of bemused exhaustion. Merry Christmas, he said, handing her a mug. Emma's been up since 5. 5:15, Emma corrected. I made it until 5:15 before I couldn't wait anymore. Michael appeared looking rumpled and half asleep, but even he couldn't quite hide his anticipation as he surveyed the presents. They settled around the tree, and Emma insisted on being the one to distribute gifts, making a ceremony of reading each tag and delivering packages with exaggerated formality. Lena watched as the kids tore into their presents, books and basketball shoes for Michael, art supplies and a science kit for Emma, feeling that familiar observer distance start to creep in. She'd bought them each small gifts, practical things she'd thought they'd need, but watching their joy felt like watching through glass, like she was adjacent to the moment rather than part of it. Then Emma thrust a package at her. This one's for you, from all of us. Lena took it carefully, surprised by the weight. You didn't need to. Just open it, Michael said, and there was something in his voice that made her look up. She unwrapped it slowly, revealing a picture frame, but it wasn't empty. Inside was a photo she'd never seen before. All 4 of them at Thanksgiving, crowded around the table, Emma leaning against Lena's shoulder while Michael grinned at something off camera, and Ethan looked at all of them with unmistakable fondness. Jessica must have taken it without anyone noticing. Below the photo, in Emma's careful handwriting, were the words, Our Family, Thanksgiving 2024.
We wanted you to have something that showed you belong here, Emma said quietly, because sometimes you still look like you think you're going to disappear. Lena stared at the photo, at the visible evidence that she was part of something, and felt her carefully maintained composure shatter. She was crying before she could stop herself, and Emma immediately wrapped her arms around her. Don't cry, it's supposed to be happy. I am happy, that's why I'm crying. Lena pulled Emma closer, then reached for Michael when he awkwardly shuffled near, and suddenly Ethan was there too, all of them tangled together in a messy embrace that felt like the opposite of her years of careful isolation. When they finally pulled apart, Lena wiped her eyes and managed a shaky laugh. I'm sorry, I don't apologize for having feelings, Ethan said firmly, especially not here. The rest of Christmas passed in a warm blur. They ate too much, watched movies in pajamas, and built an elaborate blanket fort in the living room that Michael pretended was too childish but immediately claimed the best spot inside. Lena made a dinner of roast chicken and all the sides, and they ate at the table with the good dishes. And for the first time in her memory, Christmas felt like something more than just another day to get through. That evening, after the kids had finally crashed from sugar and excitement, Lena was cleaning up the kitchen when Ethan appeared with the last of the dishes. Leave it, he said. It can wait until tomorrow. It's easier to clean now than face it in the morning. Lena, leave it. He took the dish towel from her hands. Come sit with me for a minute. They settled on the couch, and he pulled out a small wrapped box from behind a cushion. I have one more gift, just for you. Ethan, the picture that was from all of us. This is from me. He handed it to her. It's not much, but I saw it and thought of you. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a simple silver bracelet with a single charm, a small house with a heart-shaped door. The woman at the store said it represents home, he explained, suddenly uncertain. And I thought, I wanted you to have something that reminded you this is your home now, not just a place you're staying. Home. Lena held the bracelet in her palm, feeling the weight of what he was offering, not just jewelry, but belonging, permanence. The promise that she wasn't temporary. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just wear it. And remember that you're not going anywhere unless you choose to. She let him fasten it around her wrist, and when she looked at it catching the light from the tree, she felt something inside her finally settle. Not healed completely, but healing. Not whole yet, but getting there. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed quietly. The kids were out of school, and the house took on a lazy, timeless quality. They played board games and watched too much television and ate leftovers in various combinations. Michael taught Lena how to play his favorite video game, patiently explaining the controls while she fumbled through the tutorial. Emma recruited her for an elaborate art project that left the dining room covered in glitter and construction paper. And Ethan simply existed alongside her, their interactions easy and domestic in a way that felt revolutionary. Making coffee together in the morning, coordinating meals, negotiating whose turn it was to referee the kids' arguments, the ordinary intimacy of shared life. On New Year's Eve, they'd planned a quiet night at home. The kids wanted to stay up until midnight, and Lena had agreed to make special snacks and watch the ball drop on television. But at 9 o'clock, Emma complained of a headache, and by 9:30 she was running a fever. It's probably just a cold, Ethan said, feeling her forehead. But I should take her to urgent care to be sure. I'll come with you, Lena said immediately. Someone should stay with Michael. I want Lena to come, Emma said, her voice small and miserable. Please? Ethan looked at Lena, something passing between them, and nodded. Okay. Michael, you good here alone for a bit? I'm 12, not 5. I'll be fine. They bundled Emma into the car, Lena sitting in the back with her while Ethan drove. The urgent care clinic was nearly empty, everyone else apparently celebrating the new year in more festive ways. They checked in and waited, Emma dozing against Lena's shoulder while Ethan filled out forms. When the nurse called them back, Emma reached for Lena's hand. Will you come with me? Of course. In the exam room, the doctor confirmed it was likely a virus and prescribed rest and fluids. Nothing serious, but Emma was thoroughly miserable by the time they got her home and settled on the couch with blankets and water. I'm sorry I ruined New Year's, she said, tears leaking from her eyes. You didn't ruin anything, sweetheart, Lena assured her, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. But we were supposed to stay up and watch the ball drop and everything. We can watch it right here. And if you fall asleep before midnight, that's okay too. Michael appeared with his pillow and blanket. I'm watching down here too, in case Em needs anything. They all settled in the living room, Emma stretched on the couch with her head in Lena's lap, Michael in the recliner trying to look casual, Ethan on the floor leaning against the couch. The television played coverage of celebrations from around the country, but Lena barely noticed. She was too focused on Emma's breathing evening out as the fever medicine kicked in, on Michael's worried glances at his sister, on Ethan's hand resting lightly against her ankle in a gesture of connection. When midnight approached, Emma roused herself enough to watch the countdown. They counted down together, all four of them, and when the ball dropped and the crowd on television erupted in cheers, Ethan turned to look at Lena.
"Happy New Year," he said softly. "Happy New Year." "New Year, new family," Emma mumbled, already half asleep again. "That's what Mom would have said. New year, new adventures." The mention of Sarah should have been painful, Lena thought, but instead it felt natural, a way of keeping her present without making her absence the only thing that mattered. "She'd be proud of you," Lena said quietly. "Both of you. You're so brave." "She'd like you," Michael said, surprising everyone. "Mom always said the best people are the ones who show up when things are hard. And you showed up." Lena felt tears building again, but these were different from the fearful tears of her past. These were tears of gratitude, of overwhelming emotion at being accepted so completely. "Thank you," she whispered, "for letting me be part of this." "Thank you for wanting to be part of it," Ethan replied. They stayed up another hour until Emma was deeply asleep and Michael was nodding off in the chair.
Ethan carried Emma to bed while Lena gently woke Michael and sent him upstairs. When the house was finally quiet, she stood in the living room looking at the remnants of their quiet celebration, the blankets scattered across the couch, the empty mugs on the coffee table, the picture frame from Christmas sitting on the mantel. "You okay?" Ethan asked, returning from tucking Emma in. "More than okay, She searched for the right word. "I'm grateful. For all of this. For you trusting me with them." "It's not just trust, Lena. It's love. They love you, I love you, and I think maybe you're starting to believe you deserve that." She turned to face him. "I'm trying to. It's harder than I thought it would be." "The believing or the deserving?" "Both. I spent so long thinking I was fundamentally insufficient that accepting I might not be feels like rewriting my entire understanding of myself." "Then rewrite it. Write a new story. One where you're enough exactly as you are." "What if I can't?" "Then we'll remind you, every day if we have to, until you can see yourself the way we see you." Lena moved closer to him, drawn by the absolute certainty in his voice. "And how do you see me?" "I see someone who's brave enough to love children who aren't biologically hers. Someone who shows up every single day even when she's terrified. Someone who turned our house back into a home just by being in it." He reached up to touch her face gently. "I see someone I want in my life permanently. Someone I'm choosing, not because I need help or because you're convenient, but because you're you, and that's more than enough." "I'm still scared," she admitted. "Good. That means it matters. If you weren't scared, I'd worry you weren't invested." "I'm very invested, terrifyingly invested." She took a shaky breath. "I love them, Ethan, Emma and Michael. I love them so much that sometimes I can't breathe from it." "I know. And I love you." Not the way I thought I was supposed to love someone. Not romantic in the traditional sense, but something deeper. Something that feels like partnership and friendship and family all mixed together. That sounds perfect to me. It doesn't bother you that I can't, that I'm not, that you're not offering me the traditional package of romance and biological children? "No, Lena, it doesn't bother me. I already have children. What I need is a partner. Someone who will help me raise them and build a life with me. Someone who sees us clearly and chooses us anyway. That's you." She kissed him then, her first real kiss in years, and it felt like sealing a promise. Not a romantic beginning, but something more substantial. A commitment. A choice to build something together that didn't fit any predetermined mold but was exactly right for them. When they pulled apart, Ethan smiled. "Was that okay?" "It was perfect. Terrifying, but perfect."
Everything worthwhile is a little terrifying.
They stood together in the quiet house, and Lena thought about how much had changed since that autumn evening when she'd stood on this same porch and confessed she could only offer love for his children. She'd thought it was a limitation, an apology for being insufficient, but Ethan had seen it for what it really was, an offering of the most profound kind. The choice to love without expectation of return, to give without demanding reciprocation. January arrived with bitter cold and the return to routine. School started again, and the lazy holiday pace gave way to homework and basketball practices and the ordinary demands of everyday life. But something fundamental had shifted. Lena no longer felt like she was playing a part or waiting for permission to exist in this space. She belonged here, and she was beginning to believe it. Emma's birthday fell in mid-January, and she requested a sleepover party with her 3 closest friends. Lena spent days planning activities and decorating the basement, determined to make it special. The party was loud and chaotic. 4 9-year-old girls fueled by pizza and cake and the freedom of staying up past midnight. At one point, Lena overheard Emma talking to her friends while they painted their nails in the bathroom. "Is that your new mom?" one of them asked. Emma paused, considering. "She's Lena. She's not my mom because my mom died, but she's family. Like the most important family. But does she do mom things?" "I guess. She makes my lunch and helps with homework and comes to school stuff. And she listens when I'm sad and knows when I need a hug, even when I don't ask for one. So yeah, she does mom things. But she's still Lena." "That's cool. I wish I had a Lena." "You can't have mine," Emma said fiercely. "She's ours." Lena stood in the hallway, listening to a 9-year-old define her place in the family with more clarity than she'd been able to manage herself. "She's ours." The possessive pride in Emma's voice settled into Lena's chest like warmth. Later, after the party wound down and the friends were asleep in sleeping bags scattered across the basement floor, Emma found Lena in the kitchen cleaning up. "Thank you for making my party so good," she said, wrapping her arms around Lena's waist. "You're welcome, birthday girl. I heard you in the hallway when we were talking." Lena stiffened. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop." "It's okay. I wanted you to hear anyway." Emma pulled back to look up at her. "I know you're not my mom, and I know you worry about that, about whether it's okay for you to be important to us when you're not actually our parent. But Lena, you don't have to be my mom to matter. You just have to be you. And you being you is exactly what we need." The wisdom in those words, coming from someone who just turned 10, nearly broke Lena's heart. "How did you get so smart?" "Mom used to say that loving people isn't about fitting into boxes. It's about showing up and being honest and choosing each other every day." Emma smiled. "You show up every single day. That makes you family no matter what we call it." "I love you, Emma, so much." "I know. I love you too. Now come on, we should probably make sure my friends aren't destroying the basement." They went downstairs together to find the girls building an elaborate blanket fort, and Lena helped them secure the corners and add pillows, and by the time she went to bed that night, something had solidified in her understanding of herself. She didn't need to be Sarah. She didn't need to fit into a predetermined role. She just needed to be exactly who she was, someone who loved these children and showed up for them and chose them every single day. February brought Michael's 13th birthday and his increased interest in a girl at school named Sophia. He tried to be casual about it, but Lena noticed the way he checked his phone constantly and spent extra time on his hair in the mornings. "You should just ask her to hang out," Lena suggested one afternoon while helping him with algebra homework. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because what if she says no? Then it's weird." "What if she says yes?" "Then I'd have to actually hang out with her and I might mess it up." Lena smiled, recognizing the fear beneath the bravado. "Michael, can I tell you something?" "I guess." "Being scared of rejection doesn't mean you shouldn't try. It just means it matters to you. And that's okay." "Were you scared when you decided to stay here?" The question caught her off guard. "Terrified." "But you stayed anyway." "I stayed anyway." "Why?" "Because the possibility of having this family was worth more than the safety of staying alone." She paused. "Some things are worth being scared for." Michael was quiet for a moment, processing this. Sophia probably doesn't even like me anyway. Or maybe she does, and she's just as scared as you are. You think? I think people are usually more afraid than they let on. And I think being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do it anyway. 2 days later, Michael nervously informed them that he'd asked Sophia to come watch his basketball game, and she'd said yes. Ethan had raised his eyebrows at Lena in silent question, and she'd just smiled. The game was on a Thursday evening, and true to her word, Sophia showed up with her parents. She was a slight girl with dark hair and braces, and she cheered louder than anyone when Michael scored. After the game, when they stood talking awkwardly near the bleachers, Lena watched Michael's face transform into something open and hopeful. "Young love," Ethan murmured beside her. "Young courage," Lena corrected. He was terrified to ask her. Good thing he had someone to give him advice about being brave even when you're scared. "I just told him what I learned from being here. See? You're already teaching them important life lessons. That's definitely a parent thing." The words settled between them, and Lena realized she wasn't panicking at the suggestion anymore. Parent, not mother, because that title belonged to Sarah and always would. But parent in the sense of someone who guided and supported and loved, someone who showed up. March arrived with the first hints of spring and Emma's school production of a musical revue. She'd been cast in a small solo part, and she'd been practicing her song constantly for weeks. The night of the performance, Lena helped her get ready, braiding her hair and calming her pre-show jitters. "What if I forget the words?" Emma asked, staring at herself in the mirror. "Then you'll make up new ones, and no one will know the difference." "Everyone will know. There'll be a whole auditorium of people watching. And at least 3 of those people will be cheering so loud that even if you forget every word, all anyone will remember is how much you were loved." Emma turned to look at her. "You really think I can do this?" "I know you can. You've practiced so hard, and you're going to be amazing." At the school auditorium, they found seats in the 3rd row. Michael complained that they were too close, and everyone would see them, but he positioned himself where he had a clear view of the stage. When Emma appeared for her solo, Lena felt her heart clench with pride and anxiety. Emma sang beautifully, her voice clear and confident, and she didn't forget a single word. When she finished, the 3 of them cheered exactly as loud as Lena had promised, and Emma beamed at them from the stage with unmistakable joy. Afterward, when they found her backstage, Emma launched herself at Lena first. "Did you see? Did you see? I didn't forget anything. You were perfect. Absolutely perfect." "You were so good, Em," Michael added, his teenage coolness dropping for a moment. "Seriously, way better than anyone else." "Your mother would have been so proud," Ethan said, and there were tears in his eyes. "She is proud," Emma said with certainty. "I know she is, and she'd be happy that Lena was here to see it too." The casual inclusion, the assumption that Sarah's pride and Lena's presence could coexist without conflict, felt like final permission. Lena wasn't replacing anyone. She was adding to what already existed, filling gaps without erasing what came before. That night, after the kids were asleep and the house was quiet, Lena found herself standing in the living room again, looking at the picture from Thanksgiving. But this time, she didn't see herself as an interloper or a temporary addition. She saw family, 4 people who'd chosen each other and were building something new from the remnants of loss. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, appearing beside her. "How different everything is now. How different I am." "Different how?" "I used to think my life was about what I couldn't have, what I couldn't be. But now I think maybe it's about what I chose instead. The family I found instead of the one I couldn't make. The love I give instead of the love I thought I needed to receive." "That's beautiful. It's also terrifying, because it means admitting I have something worth losing. Worth keeping too, though. Worth fighting for." "Yeah," Lena said softly. "Worth fighting for." He put his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him, and they stood together looking at their family captured in a photograph, proof that belonging was possible even when you thought you'd lost the right to it. Spring came early that year, March bleeding into April with unseasonable warmth and the sudden explosion of green across the Missouri landscape. Lena had been living with the Mercers for 6 months, and the rhythm of their life together had become so natural that she sometimes forgot there had ever been a time before this. Before Emma's morning chatter and Michael's basketball schedule, and Ethan's steady presence anchoring everything. But forgetting the before also meant she'd stopped bracing for the end, and that terrified her more than anything. The crisis came on a Tuesday in mid-April, unexpected and devastating in the way that truths often are when they've been buried too long. Lena was folding laundry in the living room when the doorbell rang. She opened it to find a woman in her late 30s, blonde and polished, with the kind of careful beauty that spoke of effort and maintenance. Behind her stood a man about the same age, tall and uncomfortable looking. "Can I help you?" Lena asked. "Is Ethan Mercer home?" the woman asked, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "He's at work. Can I take a message?" "And you are?" Something in the woman's tone put Lena's defenses up. "I'm Lena. I live here. Who are you?" "I'm Christine Mercer, Sarah's sister." The smile turned sharp. "I don't believe we've met." Lena's stomach dropped. She knew Jessica, Ethan's sister, but she'd never met Sarah's family. Ethan had mentioned once that they'd been distant, that Sarah's relationship with them had been complicated, but he'd never elaborated. "Jessica never mentioned you were living here," Christine continued, walking past Lena into the house without invitation. "How long has this arrangement been going on?" "I moved in after Thanksgiving." "How convenient. And what exactly is your role in this household?" "I help with the children and the house." "So you're the housekeeper." Christine's eyes swept over the living room, taking in the scattered evidence of family life. Ethan always did need help managing things. Sarah used to worry about what would happen if something happened to her. Looks like he solved that problem quickly enough. The insinuation was clear and cutting, and Lena felt her face flush. "It's not like that." "Isn't it? You're living in my sister's house, taking care of my sister's children, playing house with my sister's husband. What exactly would you call it?" "I'd call it family," Lena said quietly, finding her spine. "And this is their home. Not Sarah's, hers and Ethan's and the kids. I'm just what? The replacement? The upgrade? Tell me, does he pay you for your services, or is room and board compensation enough?" "Christine," the man with her finally spoke, his voice weary. "That's enough." "No, David, it's not enough. Our niece and nephew are living with a stranger and nobody thought to inform us. We had to hear about it from Jessica at a church function, casually mentioned like it was no big deal that some woman has inserted herself into our family." "I haven't inserted myself anywhere," Lena said, her voice shaking now. "Ethan asked me to stay. The children wanted me to stay." "The children are 9 and 13. They don't get to decide who lives in their house." Christine moved closer, and Lena could smell her expensive perfume. "My sister's been dead less than 2 years, and already you're here playing mother. It's disrespectful, it's inappropriate, and I won't allow it." "You won't allow it?" Lena's fear was transforming into anger now. "You don't have any say in what happens in this house." "I have every say. Those are my sister's children, and I have a responsibility to protect them from opportunists who take advantage of a widower's vulnerability." "I'm not an opportunist. I love those kids." "I'm sure you do. I'm sure the comfortable life and the ready-made family are very convenient for someone in your position." "What was it Jessica said? You clean houses for a living? Must be quite the step up, moving into a nice house like this." The words hit like physical blows, each one finding the soft places Lena had tried so hard to protect. All her old fears crystallized in Christine's contemptuous assessment. She was right, wasn't she? Lena was just a housekeeper who'd gotten lucky. Someone who'd insinuated herself into a family that wasn't hers, taking advantage of grief and need. "I should go," Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That would be best." Christine's smile was satisfied. "I'm sure Ethan will understand. You were temporary help, and now the family needs to heal properly, without outsiders complicating things." Lena walked past them on shaking legs, heading for the stairs. She could hear Christine calling after her, saying something about how it was better this way, but the words blurred together into white noise. In her room, she pulled out the suitcase she'd never fully unpacked, started throwing clothes into it with trembling hands. This was what she'd been waiting for. The moment when someone pointed out she didn't belong. The moment when the fantasy collapsed and reality reasserted itself. She was Lena Brooks, divorced and childless and fundamentally insufficient. She cleaned houses. She had nothing to offer these children except a love that had always been inadequate. She was nearly finished packing when Emma appeared in the doorway, home early from a play date. "Lena, what are you doing?" Lena couldn't find words that wouldn't devastate this child. "I need to go." "Go where? You live here." "I can't. I'm sorry. I thought I could, but I can't." Emma's face crumpled. "What happened? What did I do?" "Nothing." "You didn't do anything. This isn't about you." "Then why are you leaving?" Emma's voice rose to a near shout. "You promised. You said you weren't going anywhere. You lied." "I didn't lie. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have stayed this long." "Yes, you should have. You should stay forever. You're supposed to stay." Emma was crying now, big gasping sobs that tore at Lena's heart. "Please don't go. Please. I need you." "You don't need me. You have your dad and your brother and your family. You are my family," Emma screamed, and the sound of it echoed through the house. "You're my family and you're leaving just like Mom left, and I can't do this again. Please, Lena, please don't leave me." Lena sank onto the bed, and Emma threw herself into her arms, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Lena held her, crying too now, feeling the weight of what she was about to do crash down on her. This child had lost her mother, and now Lena was choosing to become another loss, another person who left. "Who's this?" Christine appeared in the doorway, and her expression softened slightly at the sight of Emma's tears. "Emma, honey, it's okay. This is for the best." "Aunt Christine?" Emma pulled back from Lena, confusion and hurt warring on her face. "What are you doing here?" "Your Uncle David and I came to check on you, and it's good we did. This situation isn't appropriate, sweetheart. You need proper family taking care of you, not hired help pretending to be something she's not." "Lena's not pretending, she's—" Emma looked between them, understanding dawning. "You did this. You made her leave. I'm helping her see reality. She doesn't belong here, Emma. She's not your mother. She's not family. She's just someone your father hired who overstepped. Get out." Emma's voice was cold in a way Lena had never heard. "Get out of our house. Emma, I'm your aunt. I don't care. You don't come here. You didn't come when Mom was sick. You didn't come to the funeral. You didn't call or visit or help when Dad was falling apart and Michael was angry all the time and I cried every night. You didn't do anything, but Lena did. Lena showed up. Lena stayed. Lena loves us. So get out of our house and don't come back." Christine's face flushed. "You can't speak to me that way." "I just did. Leave. Now." There was a commotion on the stairs and Michael appeared, taking in the scene with quick assessment. "What's going on?" "Aunt Christine is leaving," Emma said, her voice shaking but firm. "And Lena's staying." Michael looked at the suitcase on the bed, at Lena's tear-stained face, and his expression hardened. "Yeah, Lena's staying, so whoever you are, you should go." "Michael, I'm your aunt, your mother's sister." "My mother's dead, and you weren't there, so you don't get to show up now and tell us how to live." He moved to stand beside Emma, a united front. "Lena's family. If you can't see that, then you really don't know anything about our family." Christine looked at David, who'd been silent through all of this, and he finally spoke. "Christine, we should go. This isn't our place." "But we should go." He looked at the children, then at Lena. "I'm sorry for the intrusion, and for what was said. It wasn't our business." He guided Christine toward the stairs, and they heard the front door close a moment later. The three of them stood in Lena's room, the suitcase of accusation between them. "You were really going to leave," Michael said quietly. "I thought she said things that made me think I didn't belong here." "That's crap. Of course you belong here." He paused. "Were you just going to go? Without even talking to us?" "I was scared." "So you were going to run away?" Emma's voice was small and hurt. "Like we don't matter?" "No, you matter more than anything. That's why I was leaving, because I thought you deserved better than me. Someone who was actually family, not just someone pretending. You're not pretending, Emma said fiercely. And you don't get to decide you're not good enough. We get to decide that. And we decided you're perfect. I'm not perfect, Em. I'm broken and scared, and I don't know what I'm doing half the time. So? Dad doesn't know what he's doing either. None of us do. We're all just figuring it out. Michael sat on the edge of the bed. Look, I'm not good at this emotional stuff. But Lena, you can't leave. Not because some random aunt we never see decided to show up and say mean things. That's weak. And you're not weak. I feel weak. Yeah, well, you're not. You stayed with us when Dad was a disaster and Emma cried all the time and I was being a jerk to everyone. You stayed through all the hard parts. You don't get to leave now just because someone said something that hurt your feelings. It wasn't just that. She was right about some things. I am just the housekeeper. I do clean houses for a living. I'm not— You're Lena, Emma interrupted. That's all you need to be. Just Lena. The person who braids my hair and makes good breakfasts and listens when I'm sad. The person who taught Michael to cook and comes to our games and makes this house feel like home. That's who you are. Not what you do or where you came from, just who you are to us. Lena looked at these two children, this girl and boy who'd lost their mother and chosen to love her anyway, and felt something fundamental shift in her understanding of herself. She'd spent so long defining herself by what she lacked that she'd forgotten to see what she had. Not biological children, but children who loved her. Not a traditional marriage, but a partnership built on choice and commitment. Not perfection, but presence. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have packed. I shouldn't have believed her over you. You're going to unpack now, right? Emma asked anxiously. Yeah, I'm going to unpack. And stay? And stay. Emma threw her arms around her again, and Michael awkwardly joined in, and they stayed like that until they heard footsteps on the stairs, and Ethan appeared, home early from work, and clearly having been called by one of the kids. Jessica called me, he said, taking in the scene. Said Christine showed up here. What happened? The kids pulled back and Lena stood to face him. She told me I didn't belong here, that I was taking advantage of you, that the kids deserved better than an opportunistic housekeeper playing house. Ethan's jaw tightened. And you believed her? For a minute I did. She said things that I'd been thinking anyway, that I'm not good enough, that this isn't real, that I'm just filling a gap until something better comes along. Do you think that's true? No, not anymore. These two just spent the last 20 minutes telling me exactly how wrong she was, how wrong I was for listening to her. They're right. Christine hasn't been part of our lives in years. She doesn't get to show up and decide what our family looks like. He moved closer. Lena, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Not what you think I want to hear, not what you think you should say, just the truth. Okay. Do you want to be here? With us? As family? Yes. Even though it's messy and complicated and we're all still figuring it out? Especially because of that. Even though people like Christine might show up and judge and make assumptions? I don't care what they think. I care what you think. What Emma and Michael think. What I think. She paused. And I think I belong here. Not because I'm replacing anyone or filling a void, but because I chose you and you chose me back. Because love doesn't have to look one specific way to be real. Ethan reached for her hands. Christine was wrong about everything. You're not the housekeeper. You're not temporary. You're family. You have been since the moment you decided to stay. I know that now, really know it, not just hoping it's true. Good. Because I have something I've been meaning to talk to you about, and this seems like the right time. He glanced at the kids. Can you two give us a minute? But we want to hear, Emma protested. Emma, downstairs, now. They left reluctantly, and Ethan closed the door behind them. When he turned back to Lena, there was something nervous in his expression. I've been thinking about this for a while. Talked to my lawyer, actually. And I want to know if you'd be interested in making this official. What do you mean? I mean legal guardianship. Adoption, if you're open to it. Making you their legal parent, not just in practice but on paper. So people like Christine can't show up and question your place in their lives. So you have legal rights to make decisions for them. So they know, officially and permanently, that you're their family.
Lena's breath caught. You want me to adopt them? I want you to be their parent in every way that matters. You already are, emotionally, but I want to make it legal, permanent, unquestionable. He paused. Obviously, we'd need to talk to Emma and Michael first. Make sure they're comfortable with it. But Lena, I want you to know that from my perspective, you're not auditing this family anymore. You're not on trial or probation. You're in, completely. And I want to make that official. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything now. Think about it. Talk to the kids. But know that this is real. We're real. And I'm not asking you to be Sarah or replace her or fill some predetermined role. I'm asking you to be Lena. Their Lena. My Lena. Our family's Lena. She was crying again, but these were different tears. Not fear or grief, but overwhelming joy at being chosen so completely. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I want that. I want all of it. He pulled her into his arms, and she let herself be held, let herself believe that this was permanent and real and hers. When they went downstairs, Emma and Michael were waiting anxiously in the living room. So, Emma demanded, what happened? Is everything okay? Everything's more than okay, Ethan said. Your dad has a question for both of you, and I want your honest answer. No saying what you think I want to hear, just the truth about what you want. Okay, Michael said cautiously. How would you feel about making Lena officially your parent? Legal adoption, so she has the same rights and responsibilities as I do. Emma's face lit up immediately. Really? She could really be our parent? Like, legally? If you want that. If Lena wants that. It would mean she'd be your guardian, able to make decisions about school and medical stuff. It would mean she's not just living here, she's officially family. I want that, Emma said without hesitation. I've wanted that since forever. Can we do it tomorrow? It takes a bit longer than that, Em, but yes, we can start the process. They all turned to look at Michael, who was processing this more slowly. Would she still be Lena? He asked finally. Or would we have to call her something else? She'd still be Lana, Ethan confirmed. This doesn't change who she is. It just makes it official. And Mom? Does this mean we're forgetting about Mom? Never, Lena said firmly. Sarah is your mother. Always will be. I'm not trying to replace her or erase her. I'm adding to what you already have. Different kind of love, but just as real. Michael nodded slowly. Okay, yeah. I want that too. It feels right. Emma launched herself at Lena, and Michael followed more slowly, and Ethan wrapped his arms around all of them, and for a moment they just stood there, holding each other in the middle of the living room, a family not bound by blood but by choice. The adoption process took 6 months. There were home visits and interviews and paperwork that seemed endless. But through all of it, Lena felt herself settling into her place in this family with increasing confidence. She wasn't auditing anymore. She wasn't temporary. She was choosing them, and they were choosing her back every single day. In October, exactly 1 year after she'd first stood on Ethan's porch and offered to love his children, they stood in a courtroom and made it official. The judge asked Emma and Michael if they understood what adoption meant, and Emma had said, "It means Lena gets to be our parent forever, and she already is in our hearts, so this is just making it legal." The judge had smiled and signed the papers, and just like that, Lena Brooks became Lena Mercer, legal guardian and adoptive parent to Emma and Michael. Walking out of the courthouse, Emma grabbed her hand. "Now you can't leave. It's literally illegal." "Ah, that's not how adoption works," Michael said, but he was grinning. "Close enough?" Emma insisted. "You're stuck with us now." "Gladly stuck," Lena agreed. That evening, they had a small celebration at home. Jessica came with her family, bringing a cake that said "Family is forever" in slightly smudged frosting. They ate too much and laughed too loud and took pictures that would eventually join the Thanksgiving photo on the mantel. Later, after everyone had gone home and the kids were in bed, Lena and Ethan sat on the porch in the cool October air. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Being official?" "Like something I didn't know I was allowed to want." "You're allowed to want things, Lena. You're allowed to have them too."
I'm starting to believe that. She looked at the bracelet on her wrist, the one he'd given her for Christmas, the little house with the heart-shaped door. I used to think I was fundamentally broken, that not being able to have biological children meant I was insufficient as a woman, as a person, that I had nothing of value to offer. And now? Now I think maybe I was wrong about what value means. I couldn't give you or anyone else biological children, but I could give Emma and Michael something they needed: love without conditions, presence without demands, someone who chose them not because she had to, but because she wanted to. That's everything. It's not what I thought I'd have. It's not the life I imagined when I was younger. Is it better or worse? Lena thought about it carefully. It's real. It's mine. And it's more than enough. They sat in comfortable silence, and Lena thought about the journey that had brought her here. From that small house by the creek where she'd lived alone, convinced she had nothing to offer the world, to this porch, this family, this life she'd built from the broken pieces of her old assumptions about herself. She thought about Emma, who'd loved her before she knew how to accept it. About Michael, who'd taught her that family could be chosen. About Ethan, who'd seen her clearly and made space for her anyway. But mostly, she thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, standing on this same porch, saying she could only love his children, offering what she'd believed was a limitation, not knowing that it was actually the greatest gift she had to give. I need to tell you something, she said quietly. Okay. That first night, when I told you I could only love your children, I meant it as an apology, like I was warning you that I was insufficient, that I couldn't be a real partner because I had nothing to offer you beyond childcare. I remember. But you didn't hear it that way. You heard it as exactly what you needed, someone who would love them without expecting anything in return. And that changed everything. It was what I needed, what we all needed. I know that now, but I want you to know that it's not just about the kids anymore. Somewhere along the way, I fell in love with this whole life. With you, with them, with who I get to be when I'm here. It's not romantic in the traditional sense, but it's real. It's partnership and friendship and family all mixed together into something I don't have words for. You don't need words for it. It's just us, our family, our life. Yeah, our life, she smiled. I like the sound of that. Inside the house, they could hear Emma singing to herself, getting ready for bed. Michael's footsteps moved across his room. The ordinary sounds of family, of home, of permanence. Lena Brooks had spent years believing she was broken, that her inability to have biological children made her fundamentally insufficient, that she had nothing of value to offer anyone looking for a complete family. But sitting on that porch, legally and officially, the parent of 2 children she hadn't given birth to, loved by a man who'd never asked her to be anything other than herself, she finally understood the truth. She hadn't been broken. She'd just been waiting for the family that needed exactly what she had to give. Not perfection, not traditional motherhood, not biological connections, just love, steady, present, unconditional love. And that, it turned out, was more than enough. It was everything. The screen door still squeaked when it opened. Ethan still hadn't fixed it. But now, instead of being a reminder of things left undone, it was the sound of home, of people coming and going, of life being lived, of a family that had built itself from loss and choice and the courage to believe in second chances. Emma appeared at the door in her pajamas. Lena, can you tuck me in? Of course, sweetheart. Me too, Michael called from upstairs, trying to sound casual but clearly wanting the same ritual. Lena stood, and Ethan caught her hand briefly. Thank you, he said quietly, for staying, for choosing us. Thank you for letting me, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. She went inside to tuck in her children, her family, feeling the weight of the bracelet on her wrist and the lightness in her heart. Behind her, she heard Ethan follow, closing the door on the cool October night. The house welcomed them in, warm and full of life, full of the love they'd built together from the broken pieces of before. Not perfect, not traditional, but completely, absolutely, wonderfully theirs. And for Lena Mercer, that was the greatest miracle of all. Not the family she'd thought she'd lost the right to have, but the one she'd found by offering the only thing she'd believed she had left, Love. Just love. And it had been enough to build everything.